I still remember the smell of disinfectant and the sound of the heart monitor beeping beside me. Each beep reminded me that I was still alive, though some days I wasn't sure if I wanted to be. The white walls of that hospital felt more like a cage than a place of healing. I had been there for nearly 3 months, fighting pneumonia that had nearly taken my life. My body was weak, but my heart was aching for home, for the warmth of my husband's voice, for the sound of our old clock ticking in the hallway. For 72 years, I had lived through storms, poverty, war, childbirth, grief, but nothing compared to the silence of a hospital room where you wait, alone, for someone who never comes to visit. Subscribe to this channel for more heart-touching, real-life stories. Every day, I stared at the door, hoping to see my son's familiar face, or my daughter-in-law bringing the flowers she used to love posting on Instagram. But they never came. Instead, I got messages through the nurse. "They're busy, ma'am. Your son said he'll visit next week." Next week never came. My husband, George, was too old to drive. He had called once, his voice trembling with love and worry. "Hold on, darling. Just hold on for me." Those words became my strength. I imagined him sitting at home, waiting for me, praying that I would return. We had been married for 50 years, 50 years of laughter, of tears, of shared meals and silent understanding. He was my best friend, my only constant in a world that seemed to move too fast. But deep inside, a cold fear gnawed at me. Something had changed in our family long before I fell sick. Ever since our son, Michael, became a millionaire through his real estate business, he had grown distant. The boy who once held my hand on his first day of school now spoke to me like I was a burden. His wife, Clara, always looked at me as if I didn't belong in their world of luxury vacations, designer clothes, and charity galas. When I was admitted to the hospital, Michael promised he'd take care of his father. I trusted him. After all, he was my only son. But weeks passed, and no one came. No calls, no visits. Only the nurses kept me company, sometimes sharing their food when I couldn't stand the hospital meals. At night, when the lights dimmed and the machines hummed, I prayed silently. I wasn't praying for health. No, I was praying for forgiveness. For all the times I had raised my son to chase success instead of kindness. For all the moments I stayed silent when he grew arrogant, thinking wealth could replace love. One morning, the doctor walked in with a smile. "Good news, Mrs. Walker. You're strong enough to go home next week." Home. That single word filled my heart with both hope and dread. I hadn't seen it in months. I imagined my garden overgrown, the kitchen covered in dust, and George sitting by the window, waiting for me. I couldn't wait to hug him, to make him tea, to tell him I was alive, that I was coming back to him. When the day finally came, the nurse helped me into a wheelchair. I felt like a stranger leaving a place that had both broken and healed me. The sun outside blinded me for a moment, but it felt good, like life itself was welcoming me back. I called Michael from the hospital gate. He didn't answer. I tried again. Nothing. Then I texted him. "I'm discharged. Coming home today." Hours later, still no reply. I asked a kind neighbor, Mr. Green, to drive me home. He was surprised when I called, said he hadn't seen my family in weeks. That struck me as odd, but I brushed it off. Maybe they were busy. Maybe they were planning a surprise for me. When we reached my house, I noticed something strange. The front lawn was uncut, the mailbox overflowing, and the front door slightly open. My heart sank. George was a man of routine. He would never leave the door open. I stepped inside. The air was heavy, still, and smelled faintly of medicine. There was no sound, no TV, no music, not even the ticking clock I loved so much. My hands trembled as I clutched my cane. "George," I called softly. "Honey, I'm home." Silence. I looked around. Dishes unwashed, curtains drawn, a blanket thrown over the couch. Everything looked frozen in time, as if life had stopped here weeks ago. Something was terribly wrong. My heart started pounding. I took slow steps towards our bedroom, calling his name again and again. The door was half closed, and I could hear the faintest sound, a shallow breath, weak and uneven. "George," I whispered as I pushed the door open. And that's when I saw him, lying on the bed, pale, frail, and barely conscious. His lips moved slowly when he saw me, his eyes filling with tears. "Mary," he rasped, his voice breaking. "You came back." I froze. My bag slipped from my hand. I rushed to his side, my body shaking with shock. He looked like he hadn't eaten or bathed in days. His cheeks were sunken, his hands cold. "George, what happened to you? Where's Michael? Where's Clara?" He tried to speak, but coughed violently. I held him, crying, begging him to tell me. He looked at me, the kind of look that carries 1,000 untold stories, and said, almost in a whisper, They left, Mary. They're on vacation." I didn't want to bother them. My whole world shattered in that instant. I felt the walls closing in, my heart breaking piece by piece. I had fought death in that hospital to come back, only to find that the man I loved was dying alone in our home, while our son enjoyed cocktails under a Maldivian sun. And as I held George's trembling hand, one thought echoed in my mind like thunder. What have we done to our children? And what have they done to love? I sat by George's bedside, my tears soaking into the bedsheet as the weight of what I was seeing sank in. The room that once smelled of lavender and coffee now reeked of neglect. There were untouched meals on the table, stale bread, half-drunk water, and a plate of soup turned sour with time. I could see the flies hovering over the rim of the bowl. My heart clenched. I touched his face gently, tracing the lines I once loved, the wrinkles that had deepened with the years we'd shared. His skin was cold, his breathing shallow, but his eyes still carried love and pain, twisted together like an old melody that refuses to fade. For a moment I forgot about my illness, about my own weakness. I became the wife I had always been, the woman who would move mountains for her husband. I wrapped him in a blanket, checked his temperature, and whispered, "It's okay, my love. I'm here now." "You're not alone anymore." He looked at me, eyes glistening with tears, and whispered, "I waited for you every day, Mary. Every single day." My hands trembled as I fed him a few spoonfuls of warm soup I found in the fridge, the only thing still edible after I reheated it. He ate slowly, his lips quivering, as if he were ashamed of his weakness. I wanted to scream, to shout at the world, to call my son and ask him how he could do this. But I couldn't. I didn't have the strength to ruin George's fragile calm with anger. After I tucked him in, I quietly walked around the house. Each step echoed with memories. The photos on the walls seemed to stare back at me. Our wedding picture, Michael's first day of school, his graduation day. Moments that once made me proud, now pierced my heart like knives. I noticed the stack of unopened mail on the counter. Bills, hospital forms, letters from neighbors. None of them had been touched. The once tidy kitchen was a mess. Dishes piled high, trash overflowing. My husband, my proud, organized George, would never have let this happen unless he'd been too weak to move. That's when I realized he must have been alone like this for weeks. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone to call Michael. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped it. When he finally answered, I could hear waves and laughter in the background. "Mom, hey. You're home already?" His voice was casual, too casual. I gritted my teeth. "Michael, your father is sick. He's lying here, barely breathing. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you leave him alone?" There was a pause, followed by a sigh. "Mom, calm down. We needed a break. Clara's been stressed. We're in the Maldives. The connection's bad. Dad said he was fine when we left." "Fine?" I snapped, my voice trembling. "He hasn't eaten properly in days. He's burning with fever." "Michael, he could have died here." "Mom, please don't start again. You always exaggerate things. We'll be back in a few days. Just make sure he takes his meds, okay?" And then he hung up. I stared at the phone in disbelief, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. A mix of rage and sorrow boiled inside me. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, to shatter it into pieces, the way my faith in my son had shattered. How could he? How could my own child, whom I had raised with love, with sacrifice, turn so cold, so careless? I went back to the bedroom. George had fallen asleep, his hand resting on the edge of the bed. I sat beside him and watched him breathe, whispering softly, "You didn't deserve this. None of this." That night, I didn't sleep. I spent hours cleaning the house, washing the dishes, airing the sheets, lighting candles to bring life back into the dead air. I felt like a ghost moving through my own home, trying to bring warmth back to the ruins of what was once a happy life. As I worked, I kept thinking of Michael as a little boy, the way he used to run to me when he was scared of thunderstorms, how he'd promise to take care of me and his father when we got old. "I'll build you a big house one day, Mum," he used to say, "with a garden full of roses." He built that house, yes, but somewhere along the way, he forgot to fill it with love. When dawn broke, I sat by the window, exhausted. The first rays of sunlight fell on George's face. He stirred slightly, opened his eyes, and smiled weakly. "Good morning, sweetheart," I whispered. "You made it through the night." He smiled faintly. "Because you're here. I knew you'd come back." Tears welled in my eyes again. "You shouldn't have been alone, George. You should have called me." He shook his head slowly. "I didn't want to worry you. I thought Michael would care." He didn't need to finish the sentence. We both knew what he wanted to say. I took his hand in mine. "We did our best, George. We raised him right. But somewhere, life got too loud and love got too quiet." He smiled, his eyes glistening. "You always find the right words, Mary." We sat in silence for a long time. The only sound was the chirping of birds outside and the ticking of that old clock, still working, still steady, even when everything else had fallen apart. Later that day, I prepared a proper meal, soup, bread, and a bit of tea, and fed him like a child. He thanked me after every spoonful, like he always had, and I could see the spark of life returning to his eyes. But beneath that spark was something else, something I didn't want to acknowledge yet. A deep sadness, a goodbye forming quietly behind his smile. As night approached, I sat beside him again, holding his hand. The shadows grew longer, the silence heavier. And though he said nothing, I could feel it. The distance between us growing not from anger or neglect, but from time itself. Something inside me whispered that fate had brought me home, not to heal, but to say goodbye. And as I looked at him, frail, fragile, fading, I realized that sometimes the cruelest thing life does is let you live, just long enough to see what love has become. The next morning, the house felt colder than before, not just because of the weather, but because of the silence that hung over everything. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room, it fills your soul. I walked through the hallway with my cane tapping softly against the wooden floor. Every corner whispered memories, laughter that once echoed here, Sunday breakfasts, birthdays, and late-night talks with George about nothing and everything. But now, all I could hear was the creak of the floorboards and the faint sound of his labored breathing from the bedroom. The air smelled faintly of dust and medicine. I opened the windows to let the light in, but even sunlight felt unwelcome in a house that had seen too much neglect. George called out weakly, "Mary?" "I'm here, love," I said, hurrying to his side. "I'm right here." He smiled faintly. I thought I heard your voice in my dream." "You did," I whispered, sitting beside him, "because I never stopped calling your name, even in mine." He chuckled softly, though it turned into a cough that shook his frail body. I patted his back gently, feeling the sharpness of his bones beneath his nightshirt. How could my strong, lively husband, the man who once carried me over puddles, who built our first home with his own hands, look so fragile now? I called the local clinic to send a nurse. They told me they'd been trying to reach someone for weeks, that George had missed several appointments, and no one answered their calls. My heart broke a little more. He hadn't just been abandoned by his son, he'd been forgotten by the world. When the nurse arrived that afternoon, she examined George carefully. Her expression was kind, but I could see concern in her eyes. "He's very weak, Mrs. Walker. His heart's struggling, and his body's dehydrated. It's a miracle he held on this long." A miracle. Yes, that's what he was, my miracle. My reason for still breathing. The nurse left after setting up some medication and fluids, promising to check in every few days. I thanked her and returned to George's side. He looked at me with that soft gaze I'd fallen in love with half a century ago. "You always take care of everyone," he murmured, "even when no one takes care of you." I smiled through tears. "That's what love is, George. It doesn't count what it gives." He reached for my hand, his touch barely a whisper. "Mary, I've been dreaming of you every night. I thought I wouldn't see you again." "Don't say that," I pleaded. "You're not leaving me yet." He gave a small, tired smile. "We both know time doesn't listen to prayers anymore." I wanted to argue, to fight fate itself, but deep down, I knew he was right. His body was failing, and all I could do was hold on to the little moments we had left. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I cooked his favorite meal, mashed potatoes with gravy and a small piece of baked fish. He could only eat a few bites, but he thanked me as if I had served him a royal feast. "It tastes like home," he said weakly. "You always made everything feel like home." After dinner, I sat beside him and looked at the wedding photo on the dresser. We were young in that picture, full of dreams, holding hands in a world that felt limitless. I remembered how he had promised me a life of laughter, not luxury. We had no money then, just love and faith. And somehow, that was enough. But when our son became successful, something shifted. Our family dinners turned into business meetings. Our laughter turned into polite conversation. Love became something we scheduled, not something we felt. I glanced at George, his eyelids fluttering as he drifted into sleep. The rise and fall of his chest was slow and uneven. Every breath felt borrowed. I sat in that silence for hours, afraid to close my eyes, afraid to lose him while the world slept. The ticking clock echoed louder with every passing minute, a cruel reminder of time slipping away. I thought of Michael again, my only son, my blood. I remembered the nights I stayed awake, sewing his clothes, the meals I skipped so he could have enough to eat, the pride I felt when he bought his first car. I had given him everything I could, and yet, when I needed him most, he was thousands of miles away, sipping cocktails on a beach. I opened social media on his public account, something I rarely did. The first post that appeared made my stomach twist. It was a photo of Michael and Clara in the Maldives, laughing, holding champagne glasses under a sunset. The caption read, "Finally, some peace and quiet. Life's too short to waste on drama." I stared at it for a long time. Too short to waste on drama. Was that what his father's suffering was? Drama? The tears came uncontrollably. My heart ached so deeply that I had to hold my chest to stop myself from collapsing. I wanted to delete that image, to erase it from existence, but I couldn't, because deep inside, I knew this was who he had become. At midnight, George woke again, his voice faint. "Mary, are you crying?" I wiped my cheeks quickly and forced a smile. No, love. Just thinking." He looked at me with those gentle, knowing eyes. "Don't be sad. We did our best. You did your best." I couldn't hold it anymore. I leaned forward and kissed his forehead, whispering through sobs, "I just wish he'd loved us the way we loved him." He smiled softly, his hand trembling as it reached for mine. "Maybe he will, someday. But even if he doesn't, you must forgive him. Promise me that, Mary." I hesitated. Forgive him for letting his father waste away alone, for forgetting what love means. But I couldn't say no, so I nodded. "I promise." He sighed gently, his hand relaxing in mine. "Good, because forgiveness, that's how love survives." And then he drifted back to sleep, leaving me sitting there in the dim light, surrounded by silence. The kind of silence that screams louder than words. That night, as I looked out the window, watching the stars shimmer faintly in the distance, I realized something that broke me completely. We had built a beautiful life, but we'd failed to teach our son what truly mattered. Love is not just about providing, it's about being present. It's about holding hands through sickness, sitting beside someone when the world moves on without them. And now, as I watched my husband fade slowly, I understood the cruel irony that sometimes the people who gave everything end up with nothing but memories and an empty house. And in that silence, I prayed that if tomorrow still belonged to us, I'd make sure George knew he was loved until his very last breath. That night felt different. I could sense it before the sun even went down, a strange stillness in the air, the kind that whispers warnings the heart refuses to hear. George's breathing was softer, slower, almost peaceful, but it was the kind of peace that made my soul tremble. I sat beside him, brushing his hair away from his forehead. His skin was pale and cold, and his fingers barely had the strength to hold mine. The ticking of the clock on the nightstand echoed through the room, each tick stabbing at my heart, counting down moments I wasn't ready to lose. Outside, the rain began to fall, gentle at first, then steady, as if the heavens were mourning with me. "Mary," his voice was fragile, barely above a whisper. "Yes, love, I'm here," I said, leaning closer, my hand pressed against his chest, feeling the faint thump of his heart. He smiled weakly. "You always stay awake for me. You haven't slept in days." I forced a smile. Sleep can wait. You can't. He chuckled softly, a sound that broke halfway through. You always were stubborn. Only because you made me that way. We shared a quiet laugh, the kind that hurts because it reminds you of what's slipping away. After a moment, he turned his head toward the window. The rain cast reflections on the wall, tiny shimmering ghosts dancing in the dim light. He stared at them for a long time before whispering, "Do you remember the night we got married? It rained just like this." A tear rolled down my cheek. Of course I remember. You were so nervous, you forgot your vows. He smiled faintly. And you whispered them for me. Yes, I said softly, because I knew you'd forget, so I memorized yours too. His eyes glistened. You always took care of everything, didn't you? I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. Because you were everything, George. He reached for my hand, the motions slow, trembling, and held it to his chest. "I'm sorry, Mary." I frowned. Sorry, for what? For leaving you like this. For not being strong enough. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. Don't say that. You were strong every single day of your life. You fought for us, for Michael, for everything we have. You've been my strength since the day I met you. He smiled softly, his eyes full of love. You make everything sound beautiful, even goodbyes. My breath caught. Don't say goodbye. Please, George. Not tonight. But deep down, I knew. I could see it in his face. The calm acceptance, the quiet surrender of a man who had made peace with the world. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Promise me something. Anything. Don't be angry with Michael. He's lost, not cruel. The world taught him that success matters more than love. Someday, when he wakes up from all this noise, he'll need you, the same way I always did." I nodded, though my heart screamed, no. I didn't want to forgive. I wanted to rage, to scream, to make our son feel the emptiness we were living through. But George's hand squeezed mine weakly, reminding me that love was meant to heal, not destroy. I took a deep breath and said, "I promise, George, I'll forgive him." He smiled faintly, eyes still closed. That's my Mary. The rain outside grew heavier and thunder rumbled in the distance. The storm mirrored the one inside me, wild, desperate, unstoppable. I laid my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, trying to memorize the rhythm. Each beat was a memory. Every laugh, every fight, every morning we woke up together. Then, slowly, the rhythm began to fade. "George?" I whispered, lifting my head. He opened his eyes one last time. "You came home to me? That's all I wanted." I felt his hand tighten around mine for a second, and then loosen. Its chest rose once more, then stilled. I froze. My world stopped. "George," I shook him gently. "George, wake up, please." Nothing. "Don't do this," I begged. "Not yet. I just got home. Please don't leave me." But the silence that followed was heavier than anything I'd ever known. The rain hit the windows harder, and my sobs filled the room. I held him tightly, rocking back and forth, like a child clutching a broken doll. I kissed his forehead again and again, whispering, "I love you, I love you," as if the words could bring him back. Hours passed. Maybe minutes. I don't know. Time stopped meaning anything. I looked around the room and saw traces of our life together everywhere. The photo from our anniversary on the dresser. The sweater I had knitted for him last winter. The book he never finished reading. Everything screamed him. Finally, I stood up, my legs trembling beneath me, and walked to the living room. I stared at the phone for a long time before picking it up. Michael's name glowed on the screen. My hands shook as I dialed. It rang 4 times before he answered, sounding half asleep. "Mum, it's early. What's wrong?" I opened my mouth, but no words came. My throat burned, my lips quivered, and all I could manage was a broken whisper. "Your father's gone, Michael. He's gone." There was silence on the other end. Long, unbearable silence. Then a faint gasp. "What? No, that's not possible. He was fine when we left." "He wasn't fine," I said, my voice breaking. "He was dying, Michael, alone, while you were on a beach." He didn't reply. I heard Clara in the background asking what happened, her voice muffled by the waves and the wind. I hung up before he could say anything else. I didn't want excuses. I didn't want apologies. Nothing could bring George back. I went back to the bedroom, sat beside my husband, and took his hand one last time. His face looked peaceful, as if he were just sleeping. I placed a kiss on his forehead and whispered, "You can rest now, my love. I'll be okay. I'll keep my promise." And for the first time in days, I closed my eyes and let myself break completely. The house, once filled with silence, now echoed with my sobs, raw, hollow, endless. That morning, as the sun rose and lit the room with golden light, I realized that love doesn't die when a person leaves. It lingers in the walls, in the air, in every heartbeat that remains. But as I sat there, beside the man who had been my world, I also realized something else. That loneliness is not the absence of people. It's the absence of the one heart that truly knew yours. And mine had just stopped beating too. It was 2 days before Michael finally came home. 2 days after his father took his last breath in my arms. 2 days of silence, broken only by the ticking clock and the wind whispering through the curtains. I hadn't moved much from George's side. I kept expecting him to wake up, to call my name, to ask for tea. But every time I glanced at him, the stillness reminded me he wasn't sleeping. He was gone. The funeral home had come and gone. The neighbors had brought flowers and food, murmuring words that felt like distant echoes. He was such a kind man, they said. He didn't deserve to go that way. No, he didn't. And neither did I deserve to watch him fade, while our son laughed beneath the tropical sun. When I heard the car door slam outside, I didn't move. I couldn't. My body felt heavy, like grief itself had pinned me to the chair. Then I heard his voice. "Mum?" I closed my eyes. The word used to sound so sweet. Now it felt like a wound reopening. "Mum, where are you?" I didn't answer. I wanted him to feel it. The emptiness, the silence, the guilt crawling into every corner of the house. He walked into the living room, dragging his suitcase behind him. He looked tanned, healthy, expensive, wearing a linen shirt and gold watch, the scent of the ocean still clinging to him. Clara followed a few steps behind, her designer sunglasses still perched on her head. When he saw me, sitting on the old couch, with George's framed photo in my hands, he froze. His confident expression melted away. "Mum," he said softly, "I came as soon as I could." I turned my head slowly toward him. My voice came out steady, but every word tasted like iron. 2 days. Michael, your father's been gone for 2 days. He winced. I didn't get the next flight. Everything was booked. I cut him off. You managed to find a flight to the Maldives. Surely, you could have found one home. He looked down, guilt spreading across his face like a shadow. Clara shifted uncomfortably beside him, clutching her bag. Mum, we didn't know he was that sick, she said softly. You didn't tell us. I stood up slowly, gripping my cane. I didn't tell you. I called. I begged you. You hung up, Michael. You told me not to start again. Those were your words. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. His eyes began to glisten, but I had no sympathy left. I took a step closer, my voice trembling with years of unspoken pain. Your father waited for you, Michael, every single day. He told the nurse he didn't want to bother you, said you were busy, that you'd come when you could. He believed in you till his last breath. Michael's lips quivered. Mum, please. I pointed toward the bedroom. He's in there. Go see what's left of the man who raised you. He hesitated, his chest rising and falling fast. Then he walked past me, slowly, as if the air itself had thickened. I watched him disappear into the room. For a long moment, there was only silence. And then a broken sob. Dad! Oh God, Dad! Clara stood awkwardly in the hallway, her eyes wide and red. I could tell she didn't know what to do, comfort him or stay away. She had never been close to us. Her world was polished and distant, built on appearances, not feelings. After a while, Michael returned. His face pale and tear-streaked. He fell to his knees in front of me. Mum, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought he was fine. He told me not to worry. He said that because he loved you, I said, quietly. Because that's what parents do. They protect their children, even when they're the ones dying. He buried his face in his hands. I was stupid. I thought money, success, all of it would make you proud. I looked at him for a long time. We were proud, Michael, always. But you confused pride with love. You built an empire and forgot the foundation it stood on, your family. He started crying again, harder this time. I can't forgive myself. I sat beside him, my anger fading into exhaustion. I had waited for this apology for years, but now that it was here, it didn't feel like victory. It felt hollow. I reached out and touched his shoulder. You will forgive yourself, because your father would have wanted that. But you'll carry this lesson for the rest of your life. Let it change you. He looked up at me, his eyes red and swollen. I'll make it right, Mom. I promise. I'll take care of you. I shook my head gently. You can't buy redemption with comfort, Michael. I don't need care, I need presence. I need truth. I need you to understand what love truly means. Clara stepped forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mrs. Walker, I didn't know. I'm sorry too. We were selfish. I'll never forget this. I nodded slowly. Then let his death teach you both something. That life is short, and love is not guaranteed. You have to give it while you still can. We sat in silence for a long time, the three of us. The ticking of the clock filled the room once more, steady and relentless. Later that evening, as we prepared for the funeral, Michael insisted on arranging everything himself. I watched him moving around the house, touching the furniture, looking at old photos, breaking down again and again. For the first time in years, I saw the boy he used to be. The one who used to hold my hand, who used to cry when he scraped his knee, who promised to take care of us forever. That night, after everyone had left, he came to my room. His voice was quiet, trembling. Mum, can I ask you something? Yes, dear, I replied. How did you stay by his side all those years? Through everything. I smiled faintly. Because love isn't a feeling, Michael. It's a choice. You wake up every day and choose the same person. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. Even when the world changes around you. He nodded, tears filling his eyes again. I think I forgot how to do that. Then remember, I said softly. Start now. He hugged me, truly hugged me, for the first time in years. I felt his body shake with grief and guilt, but I held him tightly, not as a punishment, but as forgiveness. Because George was right. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain. It simply stops it from spreading. And that night, as my son wept in my arms, I whispered to the heavens, "He's coming home, George. It's too late for you to see it, but he's coming home." The house felt impossibly quiet after the funeral. Not the kind of quiet that soothes you, but the kind that hums like a wound, echoing through empty rooms and hollow walls. Every morning, I woke up to the same still air. The same bed where George once slept beside me. His side was untouched, perfectly neat, as though he might come back any minute. But he never did. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to move anything. His slippers still sat by the nightstand. His glasses still lay on the dresser, smudged at the edges. His coffee cup, the one with the chipped handle, still waited by the sink. Because somehow, keeping them there made me feel like a part of him still lingered. Subscribe to this channel for more heart-touching, real-life stories. The days blended together. People came and went. Friends, neighbors, church ladies bearing casseroles and kind words. But their voices were like faint music in another room. They meant well, but grief is not a language most people speak fluently. At night, when the world went to sleep, I sat in the living room with George's old blanket wrapped around my shoulders. I watched the clock hands turn, and I talked to him, sometimes in whispers, sometimes through tears. "Why did you leave me so soon?" I'd say. "We were supposed to grow old together. I wasn't done loving you." Sometimes I imagined him answering. I could almost hear his calm, reassuring tone. "You are loving me still, Mary. Every time you remember, every time you forgive, every time you choose kindness, you're still loving me." And in those moments, the loneliness softened, if only for a while. Michael visited often after that. At first, I didn't know what to say to him. Every time he walked through the door, guilt followed him like a shadow, but I could see he was trying. He would fix small things around the house, the leaky faucet, the creaky steps, the loose photo frames. One day he brought groceries, the next he cooked dinner. His efforts were clumsy, but they were genuine. One afternoon, as we sat together in silence, he suddenly said, "Mom, I've been thinking. I want to start a foundation, in Dad's name, for elderly care." I looked at him, surprised. He continued, "I saw what happened to him, to you. People like you deserve better. They shouldn't be alone when they're sick or scared. Maybe this is my way to make it right." I smiled faintly. "That's a beautiful idea, Michael. Your father would have been proud." He nodded, his eyes softening. "No, Mum, you made me proud. You taught me what love really looks like." That night, after he left, I sat in George's chair by the window and watched the sunset. The sky bled orange and pink across the horizon, and I whispered, "He's changing, George. You'd be happy to see it." For the first time since you left, I felt a strange peace settle over me, quiet, fragile, but real. Weeks turned into months. The pain didn't go away. I don't think it ever does. But it became a part of me, like a scar that reminds you not of the wound, but of the healing that followed. I started tending to the garden again. George loved roses. He said they were proof that beauty and pain can coexist. When I touched their petals, I felt him there, in the wind, in the soil, in every drop of dew that caught the morning light. One day, a little girl from next door came running over. "Grandma Mary," she shouted, "can I help water your flowers?" Her laughter filled the yard, bright and innocent. It reminded me that life always finds its way back, even after death takes so much. I handed her the watering can and smiled. "Of course, sweetheart, just be gentle. These flowers are old, but they still bloom." She grinned up at me, "Like you." Her words made me laugh, truly laugh, for the first time in months. That evening, I sat down to write a letter to my husband. It wasn't something I planned. It just poured out of me like rain. "My dearest George, it's been 6 months since you left, and yet I still set 2 cups on the table every morning. I still talk to you as if you can hear me." Maybe you can. Michael visits often now. He's not the same man who left you alone that night. He's learning, growing, healing. Maybe your death was the lesson he needed, a cruel one, but a necessary one. I'm not angry anymore. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of what could have been. You were my best friend, my partner, my forever love. And though the house feels emptier, my heart doesn't, because you're still here, in the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the kettle, the whisper of the trees outside. If heaven has a window, I hope you're looking down, smiling. I'll keep your garden alive. I'll keep our memories alive. And I'll keep living, because that's what you'd want. Yours, always, Neri, in brackets. When I finished writing, I folded the letter neatly and placed it inside his old jacket pocket, the one still hanging by the door. Then I whispered, "Good night, my love," and turned off the light. I no longer woke up to cry. I woke up to breathe, to remember, to live. I started baking again, playing soft music in the mornings, visiting the community center to talk to other widows. We shared stories of loss, of endurance, of rediscovering ourselves after heartbreak. And in every story, I found pieces of myself reflected back. That's when I realized something profound. Life doesn't end when love does. It transforms. It becomes quieter, deeper, not about who's beside you, but about the love you carry within. One night, as I looked at the stars, I whispered softly, "You taught me how to love, George. Now I'm learning how to live." And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. I felt held by memories, by forgiveness, by life itself. There comes a time in life when you stop chasing answers and start listening to the silence. Because sometimes the silence speaks louder than words, and it tells you everything you were too busy to hear before. I remember, years ago, I used to believe that love meant togetherness. If 2 people stayed under the same roof, ate at the same table, shared the same name, that meant love. But I was wrong. Love isn't about proximity. It's about presence. And presence isn't measured in hours spent together. It's measured in care, in effort, in choosing to show up when it matters the most. Subscribe to this channel for more heart-touching, real-life stories. Now, when I wake up, I look at the empty space beside me and smile instead of crying. Because I realize it isn't empty. It's full of memories. The warmth of his hand still lingers in the blanket's folds. The echo of his laughter still dances in the air. The life we built, the love we shared, none of it truly left. It simply changed shape. And I've learned to live with that. To accept that love never dies. It just learns to exist in a different form. A few months ago, Michael invited me to see the foundation he built. It was a small, sunlit building near the outskirts of town. A home for the elderly, painted soft white, with rose bushes lining the walkway. On the sign above the door, the words read, "The George Walker Care Home, because no one deserves to be alone." When I saw it, my eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of pride. Inside, there were old couples sitting together, holding hands. Some reading, some laughing. Volunteers moving gently among them, offering tea and smiles. Michael stood beside me and said softly, "I named it after him because I needed people to remember that his life meant something, that his story should save others from loneliness." I turned to him and said, "It already has." He smiled, and for the first time in years, I saw the boy he used to be, kind, hopeful, full of love. That day, I realized something else too. Sometimes, we don't live long enough to see our lessons change someone else's life. But that doesn't mean the lesson wasn't learned. After we left the care home, Michael drove me to the park where George and I used to walk every Sunday. The bench we loved was still there, old, worn, but steady. I sat down, closed my eyes, and listened to the world around me. The rustle of leaves, the children's laughter, the rhythm of life continuing, unbothered by grief. Michael put his hand on mine. "Mum," he said, "you taught me that love is responsibility, that it's not enough to say you care, you have to show it. I promise I'll never forget that." I squeezed his hand gently. "That's all I ever wanted, my boy." As time passed, the seasons changed, and so did I. I wasn't just a widow anymore. I was a survivor, a storyteller, a keeper of lessons born from pain and love intertwined. Sometimes the neighborhood children would come over after school. They'd ask me for cookies and stories, their curious faces glowing in the afternoon sun. And I'd tell them, not fairy tales, but truths, simple ones wrapped in warmth. Love your parents while you still can. Call them, even when you're busy. Visit them, not out of duty, but out of love. Because one day, the phone will stop ringing, and you'll wish you had one more chance. They'd nod, their little hearts not fully understanding yet, but one day, they would. I often think about that hospital bed, the place I thought would be my ending. I was weak, tired, ready to give up. But life had another lesson for me. Sometimes, survival isn't about staying alive. It's about finding new meaning after loss. And I did. I found meaning in forgiving my son, in nurturing my garden, in sharing my story so others might learn before it's too late. Because if my pain can save even one soul from loneliness, then it wasn't in vain. Last night, I sat by the window again. The sky was clear. The moonlight, soft and silver. I whispered, "Good night, George," as I always do. But this time I didn't ask why he left. I simply thanked him for every year, every memory, every lesson. And as I sat there, I felt something warm, a gentle presence, like a hand brushing against mine. Maybe it was just the breeze. Or maybe love really does linger in places where it was once deeply felt. Either way, I smiled. Because I knew I wasn't alone. Not truly, not ever. If you're listening to my story, I want you to remember this. Don't wait for regret to teach you what love should have shown you first. Call the people you love, visit them, hold them close, tell them what they mean to you today, not tomorrow. Because one day, you'll come home, and you might find that it's too late. And if you ever feel lonely, just look up at the night sky. Somewhere, out there, someone you loved is watching over you. Proud, peaceful, and waiting. Until we meet again, George. Until we meet again. Period.